The investor stepped out, barely sparing the owner a glance before turning to the couple. "We've been speaking," he said, shaking the husband's hand. "And after reviewing everything, I've made a decision." The owner stiffened. The investor continued, "As of today, this restaurant is no longer yours. The paperwork is already being processed." The owner's breath caught in his throat. "What?" The investor looked at him coldly. "You built this place with my money, and I refuse to be associated with someone who treats people this way." The crowd erupted in gasps. Cameras flashed. The owner staggered back, his world spinning. This wasn't just backlash. This was the end. The wife turned to the cameras. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. And soon, this space will reopen under new management, one that welcomes everyone." The husband looked at the owner one last time. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before judging someone by their appearance." Without another word, they walked away, leaving the owner standing there, speechless. His empire was gone, his reputation destroyed, and in the most unexpected twist of all, his restaurant was now in the hands of the very people he had tried to push away. The owner stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. The restaurant, the business he had spent years building, was no longer his. It was over. The cameras continued flashing, capturing every moment of his downfall. He wanted to fight back, to argue, but deep down, he knew there was nothing he could do. His own actions had led him here. As the couple walked away, the crowd erupted into cheers. The people who had once dined in silence, pretending not to see the discrimination, were now celebrating change. Employees who had been afraid to speak out now felt a sense of relief. A toxic environment was gone, and something new was about to take its place. Days later, news spread that the restaurant was undergoing a transformation. Under new ownership, the space would reopen with a commitment to diversity, inclusion, and fair treatment. The couple, however, had no interest in running the business themselves. Instead, they partnered with local chefs and entrepreneurs who had long been overlooked, giving them a chance to succeed where they once weren't welcome. The restaurant would keep its elegance, its fine dining, but this time it would be open to all. As for the former owner, his downfall didn't end with losing the restaurant. More people came forward with stories, revealing a long history of discrimination that had been hidden behind the restaurant's reputation. With no investors left to support him, he found himself struggling to recover. His name, once associated with success, was now a cautionary tale. The couple, however, didn't waste time dwelling on him. Their focus was on the future. They continued their work, using their experience to push for broader change in the industry. And as the grand reopening of the restaurant approached, they stood back and watched with quiet satisfaction. On opening night, the lights shone brightly once again, but this time, the energy was different. Laughter, warmth, and acceptance filled the space. People of all backgrounds dined together, enjoying not just the food but the message behind it. The couple exchanged a glance, knowing they had made the right choice. They hadn't set out to ruin anyone. They had only wanted fairness, respect, and a world where no one would be turned away for who they were. And as they left the restaurant that night, they knew one thing for certain: change had arrived, and it wasn't going anywhere. Meanwhile, the couple sat in their home, watching everything unfold. They hadn't spoken publicly yet, but they knew the truth would come out soon. And when it did, the restaurant owner would finally learn who they really were. But for now they waited, letting the storm build, because this was only the beginning. The restaurant owner paced back and forth in his office, his phone buzzing relentlessly on his desk. He had tried to ignore the growing backlash, convincing himself that it would blow over. But as the hours passed, the situation only got worse. The video had gone viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. People were furious. Celebrities, activists, and even politicians were speaking out, calling for a boycott of his restaurant. His manager hesitantly knocked on the door, stepping inside with a nervous look. "Sir, we've lost over 100 reservations today. People are demanding refunds for events. Even some of our staff are threatening to quit." The owner slammed his hand on the desk. "This is ridiculous." Over one incident. The manager shifted uncomfortably. "It's not just one incident," he admitted. "Some of the staff, they've been saying this isn't the first time you've treated certain customers unfairly." People are speaking up. The owner's face turned red. He had always believed he was in control of his business, of his reputation, but now it was slipping through his fingers. And the worst part, he still didn't know who that couple really was. Meanwhile, across town, the couple sat in a sleek office building, surrounded by a team of professionals. The husband scrolled through his phone, reading the growing list of headlines. His wife leaned back in her chair, watching the restaurant owner's public response unfold on TV. "He still doesn't get it," she murmured, shaking her head. Her husband sighed. "He will." For years, they had worked behind the scenes, advocating for equal treatment and exposing businesses that engaged in discrimination. They weren't just any couple. He was a successful businessman with connections in the media, and she was a well-respected lawyer who had taken on high-profile cases before. They had remained quiet so far, letting the internet do its work, but they knew their next move would determine everything. The restaurant owner had underestimated them. He had thought they were just another pair of customers he could brush off. But he had made a mistake, one that was about to cost him everything. Back at the restaurant, another storm was brewing. More employees were speaking out, revealing troubling stories about how certain customers had been treated unfairly in the past. News stations were digging deeper, uncovering patterns of discrimination that stretched back years. The owner's empire was crumbling, and he had no idea how to stop it. But this wasn't over yet. The couple wasn't done. And soon, the world would know the full truth. The restaurant was on the verge of collapse. Every hour brought a new wave of bad press, more angry calls, and another round of refund requests. What had once been a respected establishment was now a symbol of discrimination, a name being dragged through headlines for all the wrong reasons. The owner, exhausted and overwhelmed, had tried everything, deleting negative comments, issuing a carefully worded statement, even blaming the controversy on misunderstandings. But none of it worked. The video was everywhere, and the internet wasn't forgetting. Then came the breaking point. A major news network announced a live interview with the couple. The moment he saw the announcement, the owner felt his stomach drop. He still didn't know exactly who they were, but now he was about to find out, along with the rest of the world. The anticipation built as the time for the interview approached. Social media buzzed with speculation. People who had followed the story from the beginning were glued to their screens, waiting to hear directly from the couple who had been humiliated and thrown out. Would they expose more secrets? Would they take legal action? The owner couldn't take it anymore. He called his lawyer, desperate for advice. "We have to stop them from speaking," he said, his voice frantic. His lawyer sighed. "It's too late for that. You should have thought about this before you turned them away." At that moment, the live interview began. The wife, poised and calm, spoke first. "We didn't come forward right away because we wanted to see if the owner would take responsibility on his own," she said. But instead, he denied and deflected. "So now it's time for the truth." The husband nodded. "My wife is an attorney who has fought discrimination cases for years. And I—" He paused for effect. Am a business investor with a network of partners in the restaurant industry. Late one evening, a well-dressed black couple stepped into an upscale restaurant, excited to celebrate their anniversary. The warm glow of candlelight flickered on the tables, the soft hum of conversation filled the air, and the aroma of gourmet dishes floated from the kitchen. They had heard wonderful things about this place, how it was known for its exquisite meals and impeccable service. But from the moment they walked in, something felt off. The owner, a middle-aged man with slicked back hair and a neatly pressed suit, eyed them with clear disapproval. His smile, which had greeted other guests, vanished as soon as he saw them. He leaned toward the hostess and muttered something under his breath. Moments later, she hesitated before approaching the couple with an uncomfortable look. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "We're fully booked tonight." The husband glanced around. Half the tables were empty. "That can't be right," he replied, trying to keep his voice calm. "We even made a reservation." The owner stepped forward before the hostess could respond. His expression was tight, forced. "Look, I don't know how you got that reservation, but we don't have space for your kind here." The words stung. The wife clutched her husband's hand, her heart pounding. "Our kind," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Look, I don't have to explain myself," the owner snapped, his patience wearing thin. "You need to leave. Now." A hush fell over the restaurant. Other diners exchanged glances, some looking uncomfortable, others pretending not to notice. The couple stood there, humiliated, furious, and stunned by the blatant discrimination. The husband took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, his tone measured but firm. The owner scoffed. "I don't need to explain myself to you." The wife squeezed her husband's hand and nodded. Without another word, they turned and walked out, their heads held high. But what the owner didn't realize, what he was about to find out, was that the couple he had just thrown out wasn't just anyone. And his actions. They were about to come back to haunt him in a way he never saw coming. As the couple stepped outside, the cool night air did little to ease the burning humiliation they felt. The wife shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe that just happened," she whispered. Her husband, jaw clenched, exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He had seen this kind of treatment before, but it never got easier. They walked to their car in silence, their minds racing. The restaurant's grand exterior, with its elegant gold lettering and glowing chandeliers, no longer looked impressive, just tainted with ugliness. As they reached the car, the wife turned to her husband, her eyes filled with determination. "He's going to regret this," she said firmly. Inside the restaurant, the owner straightened his suit and brushed off the incident as if it was nothing. To him, they were just another couple who didn't belong in his establishment. He had worked hard to build this business, catering to a certain kind of clientele, once he believed fit his vision of class. He convinced himself he had done the right thing, that keeping the wrong people out would maintain the restaurant's reputation. What he didn't know was that his decision had set off a chain of events he couldn't control. The next day, his staff noticed something unusual. The phone was ringing nonstop, but instead of new reservations, they were getting complaints. Emails flooded in, and online reviews, ones that had once praised the restaurant's service, were suddenly filled with angry comments. "Discrimination has no place here," one review read. Another wrote, "I'll never spend a dime at a place that treats people like this." Confused, the owner frowned as he scrolled through his phone. How had this gotten out? He hadn't realized that someone in the restaurant had recorded the entire encounter. A diner, uncomfortable with what they had witnessed, had posted the video online, and it had spread like wildfire. As the day went on, reporters started calling, local news stations were asking for comments, and even some of his regular customers were canceling their reservations. The owner's frustration turned to panic. This wasn't supposed to happen. The room fell silent. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about one dinner gone wrong. This was about justice, about standing up against a system that had allowed people like the owner to get away with this for too long. Back at the restaurant, the owner's hands trembled as he listened. He had spent years building his reputation, believing he could run his business however he wanted. But now he was realizing the truth. His actions had consequences. And the worst part, the storm wasn't over yet. It was only getting stronger. The restaurant owner sat frozen in his chair, his face pale as he watched the live interview unfold. His mind raced. A high-profile lawyer and a wealthy investor. He had made a mistake, an irreversible one. But before he could even process the full weight of what was happening, his phone buzzed again. It was his lawyer. "You need to get down to the restaurant. Now." "What? Why?" he asked, still distracted by the interview. "There are reporters outside. Protesters. And," the lawyer hesitated, "one of your biggest investors just pulled out." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had built this place with the backing of powerful partners. But if they were pulling out, it meant they saw the writing on the wall. His business wasn't just in trouble. It was on the verge of collapse. He grabbed his coat and rushed to his car, speeding toward the restaurant. As he turned the corner onto the street, his stomach twisted. A crowd had gathered outside, holding signs, chanting, and recording everything on their phones. News cameras were everywhere, broadcasting live. The restaurant, once a symbol of success, was now a battleground. He parked around the back and slipped inside through the kitchen. His staff stood in uneasy silence, whispering among themselves. Some wouldn't even look at him. His manager stepped forward. "Sir, there's something else." "What now?" The owner snapped, his nerves frayed. The manager hesitated before handing him a tablet. The couple, they just made another statement. The owner snatched the tablet and pressed play. The husband appeared on screen, standing in what looked like a conference room. His voice was steady. "After everything that's happened, my wife and I have made a decision. We won't just speak out about this. We're going to take action." The wife nodded. This isn't just about one restaurant. It's about changing the culture of how businesses operate. That's why we're working with organizations to ensure this never happens again. And as for this particular restaurant, she paused, her expression unreadable. "Well, let's just say it won't be around much longer." The owner's breath caught in his throat. What did she mean? Was there a lawsuit coming? A full-scale investigation? He didn't know. But one thing was clear, he was no longer in control. The situation was spiraling fast, and this time there was no easy way out. The owner's hands trembled as he gripped the tablet. His mind raced with possibilities. A lawsuit. A full-scale shutdown. He had never imagined that turning away one couple could lead to all this. He needed to act fast. Taking a deep breath, he stormed out of the kitchen and into the main dining area. The once luxurious restaurant felt different now. Empty tables, nervous employees, and outside, a crowd growing louder by the minute. He spotted his manager, who was already scrolling through another flood of notifications. "I'll fix this," the owner muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He straightened his jacket, pushed open the front doors, and stepped outside. The cameras turned to him instantly, reporters shoving microphones forward. "Do you have a statement? Are you planning to resign? Do you regret your actions?" He raised his hands, signaling for silence. He had rehearsed this in his head. He would apologize, claim it was a misunderstanding, and try to salvage what was left. But before he could speak, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The crowd hushed as the doors opened, and out stepped the couple. They walked toward him with quiet confidence, no anger, no hesitation. The owner swallowed hard. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. The husband met his gaze. "We gave you a chance to do the right thing," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Instead, you let your pride destroy everything." The wife nodded. "We tried to handle this privately. But when people like you refuse to change, you force the world to make you." The owner's heart pounded. "Listen, Before he could finish, another car pulled up. This time, it was someone he recognized instantly, his largest investor. A man who had poured millions into the restaurant. A man who looked furious,